The quality of a decision is like a well-timed swoop of a falcon, which enables it to strike and destroy its victim. But what about scaring the victim? Moogly moogly, bitch! Well, today we'll be looking at just that, as we dive into some of the most terrifying scare tactics used in war, ranging from blinding and mutilating soldiers to send a message, all the way to pretending vampires are real. Before fully jumping in, if you're new here, welcome, and if you're returning, it's good to see you again. As always with these videos that include like research and actual looking things up, all my sources are going to be in the description below. So if you want to read more into any of the topics I talk about today, it will be down there for you. Alright. The time the CIA pretended to be vampires in the Philippines. During World War II, the United States pushed into the Philippines, and after war they stayed because of fears of communism. See, communism was like the boogeyman to America during the 1940s to the 60s, arguably earlier and later than that.
If a person consistently reads and advocates the views expressed in a communist publication, he may be a communist.
And they didn't want it to spread, especially into the Philippines, as well as other countries. With that being said, the USA sent Lieutenant Colonel Edward Lansdale to end a guerrilla group, I'm gonna butcher this and I apologize, Hukbalap insurgency group that was against the government. And Lieutenant Colonel Edward Lansdale would be there operating from 1950 to 1954. The Hukbalap, or Huks, which is how I'm going to refer to them, were the People's Army against Japan, and remained after World War II. They had hopes of agriculture and social reform in the Philippines, but the man who would go on to influence thousands of operations after his work in the Philippines had other plans. Lieutenant Colonel Lansdale used psychological methods to weed out the Huks, slowly escalating in severity. It started off by understanding local folklore. The first scare tactic that they used was pretty eerie, but is nothing compared to what is to come. Lansdale sent a team of helicopters out with huge speakers on a cloudy day. Through those speakers projected curses upon those who housed and fed the Huk fighters. And ultimately it worked, as many Huk fighters were starved out of their hiding places because of fear from local residents. Sometimes the superstitious locals would just full on rat them out. Another scare tactic approved by Lansdale was the quote-unquote Eye of God. The Eyes of God would entail getting intel on Huk fighters as well as supporters, finding out where they lived, and then going to their houses, and across the street from their houses they would paint giant eyes. Just imagine waking up one day and looking out the window and seeing a giant mural of just eyes staring at you.
Hi.
The CIA was pulling these guys' IPs and then doing what all those assholes on COD threatened me with and actually visited their home.
Shut up! My dad works for the Central Intelligence Agency and can get your entire neighborhood addicted to crack!
Now onto the most terrifying thing that the CIA would do. The CIA had gotten intel about the Aswang, which is a shape-shifting evil entity, but with many similarities to a vampire. So reasonably, the CIA decided to just set up fake vampire attacks. Many of the Huk fighters were close to the wooded areas. In the Philippines, there's a ton of wooded areas, so the CIA would use that to their advantage. They'd pick off lone soldiers of the Huk resistance, end them, poke 2 holes in their neck, and then drain them of their blood. They would then throw their bodies back out on the paths where other Huk fighters would find them. And this actually worked. News about dead bodies being drained of blood would spread massively within the Philippines. But I need to do a quick timeout. We don't know if the people of the Philippines at the time actually believed that there was a vampire out there, because what's almost as scary as vampires is people pretending to be vampires. But hey, if it works, right? Now the CIA would do other things like dressing up as Huk fighters and harassing locals, but eventually the Huk fighters would dwindle and the CIA would take control of the Philippines. But these methods used in the Philippines would influence many CIA operations afterwards. Can you think of any other weird scare tactic the CIA has used before? During World War II, Germany began to drop millions of leaflets to the enemies on the front lines. These propaganda-filled leaflets had all types of messages in them, usually with the focus to persuade the enemy to surrender, but in some cases to actually join their side. If you know anything about Germany in World War II, they weren't the most loving and accepting of people. However, to show how falsified propaganda can get, Germany tried to convince African Americans to join their side, pointing out racism in America. Now mind you, Germany kind of had this like superiority thing going on about like blonde hair, blue eyes, and I'm pretty sure something involving skin color in there. So it's just a bit weird that they thought this would work. But it does illustrate the lengths Germany was going to try to do anything to get the power back in their favor. As for intimidating leaflets, if you've seen the movie Dunkirk, that scene where all the flyers are coming down slowly and it's really eerie and pretty scary, that actually happened. Here are the actual leaflets. And personally, I'd probably be intimidated, but then again, I'm just some asshole who recreated Waco in Minecraft. But we can look at accounts of some of those 338,000 soldiers who were rescued, who said that the leaflets that were dropped were actually great use for toilet paper. I find it really funny that Germany was like, here, take this, be scared, and then everyone else was just like, I'm gonna wipe my ass with it. Leaflet propaganda was actually used a lot during World War II.
And this is how they drop their leaflets over places like Prague and the Skoda munition factory. That's all there is to it.
America actually started sending leaflets to Germany towards the end of the war, in which it said, Austria is out of the war. Germany is alone. The whole world knows that the war is over. And at the bottom it says, signed Americans. What the hell? Sometimes propaganda can be pretty cool. Look at any of the COD games. Okay, well, maybe not any of the COD games.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
Our senses tell us when to be scared. These senses can be set off by what we see, feel, or hear. And the latter is what is used in the next example to scare enemy soldiers. The Trumpets of Jericho. The Stuka dive bomber planes were planes that were feared by enemies of Germany in World War II. The Stuka planes were designed by Hermann Pohlmann and were originally tested in the Spanish Civil War, in which they proved successful, eventually becoming one of the main planes used by Germany, starting off with multiple successful campaigns, getting the nickname dive bombers because of the ability to maneuver and dive straight down, releasing bombs that would swing out away from the plane, and features that would automatically pull the plane right back up after unloading the payload. However, this increase in G-force usually knocked the pilots unconscious. But the thing is, there's a ton of bombs and planes in World War II, so what makes this one so scary? Well, listen to this. The idea to put two horns on the wings is unclear if it was created by Adolf or Ernst Udet, who was in charge of research and the development office. And if you're upset that I mispronounced that name, it was on screen and he was a Nazi, so fuck him. Sorry. The invention was solely to create fear, and today it's one of the most iconic sounds of all time, usually used for any aircraft in a war movie just to signify that there's an airplane in the sky. And the fear that was caused was rightfully earned. Those successful campaigns that I mentioned were even more fear-inducing when you heard planes from miles away and you couldn't see them, but you know that they were coming and they might come for you. And if they come for you, you're probably not going to survive. That being said, the horns actually decreased airspeed by 15 miles per hour. And in general, the planes didn't have much of defenses in any manner. So if you put the Stuka dive bomber into a dogfight, they're usually not going to win that fight. And while the negative 15 miles per hour was fixed when they put the horns on the bombs themselves, which is, again, still pretty fucking terrifying, the plane would still get outdated by other planes and allied forces. Still, this sound terrified millions of men. And finally, we're going to end the video on a much more graphic scare tactic. The blinding of 15,000 men after the Battle of Kleidion. The battle occurred on July 29th, 1014, and was formed after a tension between Byzantine Emperor Basil II and the Bulgarian Emperor Samuel. These tensions in the late 10th and early 11th century would cause the Byzantine Empire to fight the Bulgarian Empire in the valleys of the mountains of Belasita and Ogresden in Bulgaria. My apologies if I'm butchering these names. I swear I'm looking these up and I'm trying my best. The battle was a decisive and devastating battle. The Bulgarians were slayed in mass. I couldn't find an estimated number, but multiple sources said that brigades, or whatever word is used for a ton of soldiers, were slaughtered. The battle didn't destroy the First Bulgarian Empire. However, many historians have pointed to it as a turning point, as it disabled a ton of Bulgarian defenses, which eventually would lead it to fall. But we're looking at scare tactics. So what did Basil II do that allegedly gave Samuel, the leader of the Bulgarian Empire, a heart attack, which would end him? Well, Basil II, aka the Bulgarian Slayer, blinded 15,000 men that we know of, which is already brutal enough, but the way he did it was very thought out. For every 100 men, one man would get blinded only in one eye. So that one man can guide those 100 men back to where they came from, to show Samuel what Basil II can do. And it is alleged that when Samuel saw his army come back blinded, he'd have a heart attack and pass away. So I'd say that was a successful scare tactic. Within the next 4 years, the First Bulgarian Empire would fall. And Basil II is considered one of the greatest Byzantine emperors of all time. And while that can be up for debate, the nickname Bulgarian Slayer is pretty fucking accurate. Did you know about the blinding of 15,000 soldiers? Alright, so that was some of the most interesting scare tactics used in war. If you enjoyed this video, a like helps me out, so does any engagement. It gets the video out there and I appreciate it. If you think I earned it, why not subscribe? Alright.
On television.